If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.
Hey, Barrett. Nice to see you. Welcome to Yachting USA.
Yeah.
Finally, here we are.
Welcome to Hill Robinson.
I love it. I love it. This is the first conversation I'm having formally with a yacht management company. I intentionally wanted to get a little deeper into this whole podcast thing before I went down that rabbit hole. And this is, by the way, episode number 78. So thank you. Thank you. We are definitely having an interesting conversation and keeping it rolling. A little background here for those that don't know. I started the JMS Yachting USA division 3 years ago. And held essentially the same kind of position you had. I was the president of that company. You're the president of Hill Robinson US. So we have some common ground. We were at one point in time friendly competitors.
Yep.
And here we are just friendly. And thrilled to be in your office, Barrett. And let's talk about your life in the wonderful world of yachting, shall we? I always like going back in time. And tell me, what got you into this space?
I remember actually when you were with JMS and we actually had a good conversation about sort of management and getting that side when we were going to the Bahamas.
I was going to say, we had a wonderful flight over on a private jet to Freeport.
Yep.
And saw what Bradford was doing with their facility. And they were actually, I thought they were being pretty forward-thinking, intelligent about knowing they wanted to enhance that facility and asking the hard questions. Which direction should we go?
Yeah.
And they went to yacht management companies. And we'll talk about this later, but I think this is something that's not well understood. Yacht management companies are such a big resource in this industry.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think resource is the key.
Yeah. So we had fun on that trip.
Yeah, it was very nice.
It was fun.
It's nice to go in 20 minutes and back.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I got to spoil you.
I know, one of the fringe benefits.
Yeah, no, we love that.
Yeah.
So tell them, how'd this happen for you?
It actually happened just by happen chance. I was working for an auction house and it was my first job out of college when I was outside of Philadelphia. And I was getting a little bit bored with it.
Okay.
I was a regional administrator. I thought the whole concept of it was great. Art and jewelry and just everything was like exciting. And I quickly learned that working in New York is very different than working in Philadelphia. And I happened to have joined the company at the wrong time.
Okay.
And so there was a little bit of a collusion issue that was going on between two auction houses. And unfortunately, there wasn't the opportunity to go to New York. I stayed in Philadelphia and kept going on. But my boss picked up after about 2.5 years that I was bored. And so she kindly did me a favor and fired me.
Oh.
Yes, and it was the summer, so at least we had that going for us. The sky's the limit for the summertime to be jobless and figure out something else to do.
I love that, though, in the concept that people look at that kind of thing and think, oh my gosh, my life's over, or my career's over, whatever. And I tell people sometimes failure is your first step to success. And that was probably a big gift handed to you at that time.
It was huge. And I had an intern there and she was just so into it. And I was like, you know what? You're going to be far better at this than me. And so when the whole thing happened, I was far from surprised when my boss told me that this woman was going to move into my position. I was like, hey, we know that's going to work. So congratulations to all of them. And away we all went. During the summer, I was talking to my mother's best friend's daughter, whose boyfriend's best friend was looking for somebody to cook on his 125-foot schooner for the summertime. So it was going to be based out of Newport and go up to Maine and things like that. And I figured, hey, my mom taught me how to cook. I can read a recipe. I can try and make things look good. So I said, what the hell? So I just packed up my car and handed my cat to my parents and said, I'll see you guys soon. I went up to Newport, started, and it was a lot different than I thought. I joined the boat in a shipyard, and it was very much a boys' team. The classic yachts and the wooden boats are a very different personality from the yachts that we're dealing with.
No doubt. They're stunning, though.
They're beautiful,
yes.
But it's a different mentality, and it's a different type of person. I went into it eyes wide shut and learned daily along the way. And It was great. There was a great camaraderie that came from it. I really enjoyed working with the crew. I was cooking on board, technically the chef, though I don't think I'd ever call myself a chef, not having been formally trained in it. I figured that stuff out, and
You could feed the boys.
I could feed the boys, no
Right.
problem. I could feed the boss too, and I could whip up hors d'oeuvres, and it was everything that we needed. So I thought it was just going to be a summer thing, but then there was the opportunity to head down south and then head over into the Caribbean. And so
Stayed on board.
I stayed on board. So October in
Wow.
Newport starts to get pretty cold, and what are you going to do? So away we went. And I remember leaving Newport in the dark of night, and there was like, we were trying to outrun, I think, a squall that was coming through, and it was just dark, and it was wavy, and it was just, couldn't see anything. So it was a little bit overwhelming, I think, going from there. Then having to go into the galley and start cooking gimbal stove, boiling water, things
What
like
could
that.
possibly go wrong?
Exactly. I prided myself in not getting seasick too much, but that one night on the start, it did, and I
That'll test you. It will
vomited
test
right
you.
in the galley sink, and then we carried on.
Keep going.
It did, but that was the only time, and so
Wow.
everything just worked out. And it was a year that I stayed on board the boat. I've never worked harder in my entire life,
I'm sure.
but it was a lot of fun. You know,
You
the whole
learned a
Antibes
lot.
Classic. Learned so much and
Yeah.
learned that I could do it.
Right.
And it wound up being me and the crew of 7 boys. And then when the race team came on, there's another 17 people that
Now,
you're
did you
dealing
get
with.
up on the deck and help sail the boat? Or you
I
stayed?
did,
All
yeah,
right.
I did. I ran the runners and I was on the aft deck, did that, but then I also had to run downstairs and make sure that there was all the sandwiches, wraps, and everything ready to feed the race crew going, and then cooking dinner at night and getting everybody cleaned up. And then I was, to accommodate guests, I had to sleep in the forepeak on sail bags, and it was fine. It was up first, sleep last, and away we went.
There
So,
you go.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a great, again, just that whole classic scene is a wonderful group of people.
So when I say there's nothing quite like being on the open ocean under sail, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Well, the best thing about it too is at that time, this was like 2003 and 4, there was once you went offshore, there was no communication. There was the radio.
No
There was no
Starlink.
cell phones. There was no computer. You literally disappeared for the period of time that you were offshore, and then you came back into communication then. But
I'm going to go out on a limb right now because
Yeah.
we're going to talk about crew and yachting eventually. But don't you wish you could do that today? Just just let the boat leave the dock, and all that communication
it.
shuts down. Wow, that would simplify so many things.
it would make, I think just the break is great. There's always something in the back of your head, particularly in the yacht manager role. When you go to sleep and I wake up at night kind of fretting over something, or if there's things outstanding still that you're waiting for. So you can't help it but think about it. And then if you really don't have a phone to look at immediately, or wake up to, for us, 6 hours behind our colleagues and already behind the 8 ball, it's interesting.
Right,
So it would be delightful.
Yeah, I remember that from my days with JMS. Is they were Monaco based, and so their day's half over when we're starting the days. We're hearing about everything.
Playing
It's like
catch up
hitting the
until-
ground running. It's
I would
that's
say
real.
My day doesn't start until 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're on the boat at sea. That's amazing. And did you rotate to another boat after that, or did you rotate to shore-based, or what was your career path looking like then?
It was a really hard boat. It was an interesting program. By the end of it, we came back into Miami, and she was going to the shipyard, and I said, now's a great time to go home and take a break for a couple of weeks. And I got home and then was deciding I don't really want to go back to that particular program. And then I said, it was a nice foray. And then I broke my ankle.
Ouch.
And then spent the summer at home with my dad and my mom on the hammock. And then I went out to California for a birthday party, and I wound up sleeping on a friend's couch for 5 weeks. And I found a temporary job as a yacht accountant. As an accountant on a movie set. And so I did that for a couple of weeks, and then decided I want to move to San Francisco. And then moved to San Francisco, and I realized San Francisco is a great place to visit, but not the best place to live. So that was short-lived. And then, fantastically, a friend of mine who I'd known from Newport and got to know the first time around working on the schooner, he invited me to come back and work on a Hinckley with him as the mate. So I jumped at that and moved back across the country and got going, and that really was the first day of the rest of my life.
There you go. There you go. Was this a motor yacht?
It was a sailboat.
Sailboat. Okay,
It was
beautiful
a Hinckley,
boats.
yeah, 7
So
days.
you stayed in the sailing space for a while.
I did. I like it. I think it was something I understood. I grew up sailing dinghies and the likes, but it was, again, just confidence working with a captain that I knew. And then, funny enough, it was an owner who was from Philadelphia, so it all stars aligned. And then just being in Newport again for the summer was pretty awesome. So
That is pretty awesome.
yeah, that stayed. And then during the time, a gentleman was hired by the captain because the owner had a stroke. And so I wanted to make sure that we were fully trained up medically and knew how to deal in emergencies and the likes. And yeah, the gentleman who was hired came on board for a CPR refresher course, and and, how some things go. And yeah, met a boy.
That was Chris?
That was Chris.
Oh,
yes.
boy. All right.
But,
good job, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I wound up finding a job with a yacht designer in Newport. So he was a designer of sailboats, Ted Fontaine, and I started working for him, and he was just developing the friendship yachts. And so it was a shore-based job, but it was excellent because it was also working on the boats.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. You're still staying up in New England in that part of the world, which is so pretty in the summertime.
It is. There's no better place in the summer.
Yeah. What happens in the wintertime?
It gets very cold and it gets dark.
Yes, it does.
And it's very sad when it's 4:15, you're watching the sun go down and there's still a lot of stuff yet to be done. So I'm not really a person who likes being very cold.
No.
So then there was the opportunity to move to Florida, and here we are now. Yes.
Love
yes.
it. So what brought you to Hill Robinson?
My husband had gotten a job with a shipyard. We came down and I was like, all right, fine. I'll just come down and hopefully I can find a job. And so it was a little time working. I still did some stuff for Ted for a while. But yeah, I got a call from Michael Reardon, who was running the shop then. And we had a quick meeting on a Sunday afternoon, and then a quick interview with Nick Hill and Neil Robinson the next day. Wow. And then I started on the Tuesday.
Wow. We have so many parallels, because I took Mike's position. He was helping out JMS Yachting when I got involved.
Yes.
And geez, hey, Mike, you're really showing up. I love it. He's got a great story to tell, too.
Yeah,
what a remarkable career Mike's had in this industry.
And he was wonderful to work for. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of stuff that I've learned from him that I tell my team now, saying,
well, when do you stop learning?
I don't think you ever do. Every day
you ought not to, if you want to stay relevant and continue moving in your career, whatever that looks like.
You have to. And in the position that I've come in leading the shop here, there's the personal element to it, dealing with the people. So there's the people leadership, which is not my favorite, but you have to learn how to do it.
That's right.
And then it's reading all the magazines and making sure that you're reading the daily updates and still paying attention to social media to see what's going on with home. But then they're still running a business, and this company is evolving and growing daily. So there's all of those things that we're learning along the way. Every day is a different day.
Well,
and
this isn't an 8-to-5 job.
No, sir. You know that.
I know that so well. Yeah, that's the reality. It's like you love what you do, but boy, it's hard to turn it off. You almost can't.
I know. I don't even bother really trying to plan for vacations or things. You plan to take the day off, and then there's some ginormous thing that comes in. And you're like, that's great. Okay, I'm just going to put that away right now, and we'll kind of keep on.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I really do. So let's talk about what Hill Robinson is. I do understand it's a company that's 25 years in business, and it's really built a reputation. It's scaled very nicely. Run us through just service level services. What does Hill Robinson as a yacht management company offer?
Hill Robinson kind of offers everything that the clients need. Originally, it was starting out a little bit charter management, and then we were doing yacht management for this small selection of boats. And so from there, charter and yacht management went along nicely. And as the fleet grew, there came a response to clients' needs and desires. We expanded into VSAT, seeing that was a great service to be able to offer. We've gone into crew employment, crew recruitment, payroll, training, ISM compliance. We've got refit. Refit's huge, particularly for us in the States. Obviously, there's more of the new build side of things that are going on with our colleagues in the Isle of Man and in Europe. But there's a nice complement to the two that is here. So
what USCs do you have with Flag?
We have Cook Islands, we've got UK, we've got Marsh Islands, Jamaica, we have Cayman Islands, and I'm sure there are others, and I just can't tell you right now.
That's all right.
Those are the ones that I deal with.
That's a nice portfolio.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that covers basically everything from what I'd consider A-grade A-list, the flag states you go through if you get a little different kind of program going on.
Yeah, and we definitely talked to owners beforehand when they're looking at, somebody told them that, oh, if I go to Jamaica or if I go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines or if I go somewhere, it's going to make my life much, much easier. And yeah, it will. You don't have so many people, so many regulations that you have to follow. But at the same time, as the safety managers, which it's not your job to say this is the easy way. You're saying, yes, that's the easy way, but it's not necessarily the recommended way.
That's right.
Exactly.
And there are times, I think, where your insurance underwriters come in and they put their voice to the equation as well.
And I think there is that. The underwriters and the brokers definitely listen to what we have to say. They're going to say, take guidance. We'll agree with what your opinion is. If it matches what if it matches what the flag state is, then we'll agree with you and the flag state, and we'll take your recommendation. And so I think that there is a lot of that is built, and I think that's great respect, I think, from the insurance industry towards the managers.
That's something I learned early on when I got involved with yacht management was, and it's funny, I didn't really respect it or understand it until I got involved with yacht management, how important, really important, the insurance underwriters are to our industry. Without them, we don't have it. Everything would stop.
No, I think, and it's a good thing that you don't have to deal with them regularly and you don't want to deal with them. But when you do have to go and deal with your broker and then with the underwriters, sometimes you just want to cry with joy that there's somebody there who's going to handle it, who's going to give you guidance on doing it. So it really becomes a collaboration.
When you can...
Exactly. So I'm happy to do whatever they tell me to do and we'll organize it all. But again, the guidance, and that's just, I think, a very calming and reassuring thing, particularly now as things are getting more technical, more dynamic, more complicated, and crew coming in, and just the world in general seems more complicated. I think it's huge for that.
Think about this. I was just on board this past November when I was in Amsterdam. Tristan and I were invited to go on board the 119-meter vessel being delivered by Van Lent. Breakthrough. Remarkable boat.
I was just reading about that today.
And I had a couple takeaways on it, but one of the takeaways was putting my hands on the cryogenic hydrogen tanks. And it's like, wow, this is real. And it takes up a lot of real estate, by the way. And in the conversation with the program manager I was with, he said one of the challenges we're having right now is the approvals in the licensure for the hydrogen to be able to fuel up. The city of Amsterdam, for instance, didn't have a way to address that because it was that new. So new technologies, new complexities. We'll talk about this later too. I walked into the crew accommodations. Oh my God, 2 levels of crew. Each stateroom looked like a small hotel suite.
I know, and now they're single too, so it's like there's plenty of them as a single occupant.
Finally, now of course it's a big boat, so you can afford to do it. Space is available. Given the crew the opportunity to actually have a little bit of personal space, and that is so important for just the well-being of individual crew members. So good to see that kind of stuff going on. That's a mixed bag there. You got this new technology, you got to figure it out. Wow, we'll see what that's going to bring to the future. But then you see the focus on crew, which is also really good.
They just completed their first fueling today, right? Or yesterday?
I think they did.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
So it'll be really cool to get the feedback on what that looks like, and hybrid technologies and everything that's really happening. Our industry really has a lot going on if you're plugged into it. You just have to stay aware and, like you said, do a lot of reading. It's not always recreational reading.
No.
But it's good stuff.
No, those daily updates are pretty handy too.
Yeah, no, that's true. Unfortunately, there's if you subscribe to other places, you get that feed constantly coming in. You just got to filter it. Moravia. I understand this is something new to Hill Robinson. Just a couple of years ago, you guys acquired this company. When I did my deep dive, I realized this goes way back, at least to 1962. You said earlier early this afternoon, it might be
there's a history further with that.
It's a Monegasque company?
Yeah, it's got Monegasque history and things like that. And again, looking at the market now, we were finding that a lot of the brokerage houses were starting to offer management. And so those places that we used to be an open kind of door, a good mutual source of referrals, things like that, when you're not fighting the same fight, for lack of a better word, started quieting up a little bit, offering their own house services and things. And so it seemed to be definitely within the broker's best interests and the owner at the time to keep it all in-house because of, it's all one place. It's great. So we found there that we're losing a little bit of market intelligence. You're out of it a little bit more, relying not necessarily on those that are brokering the deals, referrals from those that may be looking at it from the outset. It was decided that was something that we needed to do. They did go ahead and purchase Moravia, but they were very diligent on maintaining them as completely separate
autonomous
entities.
from each other.
Totally different functions, totally different colors, everything like that. Meant to complement each other, but they are not ever one and the same.
Okay, that's good to know. That was something that we talked about in my previous management company, was what we called the independent part of it being exclusively in the management side, so there would be no potential crossover into brokerage. But we worked on that. We worked very closely with brokers, usually independent brokers that didn't have yacht management as part of their suite of services. So there's room for both models in this space, and I can see where you could find an upside to either direction you go in, actually.
I think so. And I think the one nice thing I think about being independent, particularly for Hill Robinson, is it's Nick Hill and it's Neil Robinson. The founding partners are still making the decisions on things. We've grown as a company hugely. So there's an executive team and all of that stuff now. But Nick and Neil remain readily available to any of their clients, to any captains, to any crew.
Doesn't that speak volumes to that partnership?
It does.
In my previous company, at Nautical Structures, my partner Bob Beline and I stayed partners for 27 years before I decided to move on to do some other things.
Yep.
And that's like a marriage.
It is.
But when you've got the right mix of people in the right mindsets, boy, you can do magical things.
No, and I think it's a great compliment to do them that they have a number of employees who celebrated 25 years. We're there with them at the very beginning. My colleague Giles is just 22 years. My colleague Marianne's 25, and Trina is 25.
Think about it.
They've been there from the very beginning and have seen how the whole thing has grown. And I've been here, it'll be almost 15 years. And it's interesting just to see how it's grown even in the last 5. Post-COVID, it was amazing again how yacht management seemed to gain value one more time.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, is to understand the value of yacht management. I'll go out and say clearly that perhaps one of the biggest opportunities I missed out in when I was doing my job at Nautical Structures, which was to find clients, was to build our sales and scale the business, was the resources that were available. And what I didn't really understand as well as I could and should have was what the yacht brokerage community could bring and what the yacht management companies could bring. Because when you closely align as a manufacturing service company with these entities, you are connecting to a huge fleet of vessels that constantly need quality service. And that's what we were delivering: quality products, quality services. It was later in my career where I really started picking up on the magic of that. And I would tell anybody that's watching this podcast, pay attention to those two entities as good, synergetic, collaborative businesses or business models to work with: yacht management companies and brokerage houses.
I think also for you, switching back to the vendors, we've recognized just exactly how important the vendors are. And when you do need to have a vendor put you on the very top of the list, it comes with that great working relationship.
Yes,
so
it does.
We did develop a big procurement department. And so our procurement department is based out of the Isle of Man. And the wonderful thing about that is that given the volume of business that we do with various vendors, we're able to leverage that to the advantage of some of the owners. So the buying power is transferred straight to our fleet owner pockets, or not having to. It helps with discounts and things like that. So that's another thing that I think is something that we respect everybody that is doing business with us, and want to make sure
that's
that
completely
continues.
legitimate. I would tell potential management clients, owners that are on the fence: do I stay with my captain, or do I actually hire a professional yacht management company? If you go with a company such as yours, the one I was representing previously, we would pass along all of that to our owner. We would basically say, listen, if you work our program intelligently, our actual monthly cost of management is greatly offset. Sometimes it's completely replaced by the discounting and the benefits and the value we're able to bring with these relationships.
Yep.
And so therein lies the real value. You've got a partner in the industry with relationships throughout the industry that can bring you product, services, value that you can't get on your own.
And when you're in a real pickle, being able to have somebody call and just say, I really need to call in a favor, and for that particular vendor to say, all right, I'm dropping everything right now, I'm coming to you with that stuff, that is just worth its weight. It's never burn a bridge. Always keep those good relationships going, because they do really work in the end. And I think that is the mutual respect between the managers and the people who help us make sure the boats are running the way that they're supposed to.
There are complex floating devices that work 24/7 that are sitting in salt water. What could go wrong?
And they're living, breathing things as far as I'm concerned.
They totally are.
You can't just have one sit there doing nothing.
So you're talking about the retention of employees in Hill Robinson, and that's remarkable. I tell the same story often with my previous business. And then you look at the crew space, and don't you wish you could look at crew and say they would stay in their programs as long as the people you get land-based, because that is one of the challenges.
It's a huge challenge, and just trying to find the good quality people is even more. We've been looking for some heads of department, and you're sitting there looking through 60 odd CVs and still struggling to find the good person. And then you realize the good people are truly have multiple offers coming to them. So then you need to encourage the owner. I need you to make a decision, like, you need to talk to them right now. And then we can be able to lock this stuff. And again, it's just trying to get them to understand, because some of them will come back 2-3 weeks, a month later and say, oh, I'm ready to talk to them right now. And so they're out. We're starting again. And so I think that's good. And slowly owners are coming around to that. But I think on the same side, I think there's a little bit of, I can't help to say it, but you always used to be like, oh, crew, it's the reason why owners want to leave. And I don't think it has to be like that. I think a lot of owners now are becoming a little bit more committed to their crew and realizing that education and training really do make a difference. And I think it's more of the education side of things that is what does it. You can train somebody. I took a course on silver service online. I'm ready to go. Okay, let's do silver service while you're underway and everything's moving and everybody's running late and all this stuff. It's a completely different.
You get all the stresses from your head of departments coming down, and the owners and the guests and all that, the things that you just could not possibly imagine when you're in, whether it's an online course or whether you're in one of the local training agencies. The real world,
it's moving.
Oh boy, it's always moving. Absolutely. We talk about crew welfare, and it is, some people would argue that, boy, that's an overused conversation or discussion point, but I would say that it's absolutely not. I would argue that we're just now really recognizing how valuable and important a focus on crew welfare is to the operation of our boats.
And I think the word that, what you said with crew welfare, I think is something that kind of communicates a little bit more of the importance of it, and that it's not a trending word. Well-being and all that, my journey and things like that, are things that sometimes you think are a little bit wishy-washy and stuff. They're trending right now. It's not serious. Crew welfare is serious. Crew welfare is the mental health. I think a lot of the younger generation is coming in, and there is the homesickness. They haven't been like me growing up and saying, you're on your own this weekend, go knock yourself out and just be home when the sun goes down and all those kind of things. I think being connected is something that's hard when you have to be disconnected.
It's a challenge. I tell people, when I started my maritime career, I actually worked offshore as a commercial diver, and we would leave the house, the apartment, and go to the flagpole and get picked up to go on the crew boat to go offshore to work. And in the department I was in, sometimes we were 6 or 8 weeks offshore or longer. And there was no cell phones, and there was no satellite phones either, really. There was some ship-to-shore radios, and in an emergency, you could get some communication. But for the period of time, the tenure we were offshore working, we were working. You just disconnected. You had to. You had no choice. Now, I talk to captains, and they're walking the deck, and they're seeing a crew all of a sudden throw the cell phone in a pocket, and the crew are dealing with the dramas of their friends and family and everything back on shore or on other boats. There's programs now where crew are being instructed to leave their cell phones in their stateroom or drop them into a bag as they come on deck.
Working hours.
Yeah, and I think it's a balancing act that we have to pay attention to, because the more connected we are to our society and to our world, the more stress we get brought in, potentially artificially. And so I would bring to you the question, as a management company, do you have policies or procedures? How do you look at this in the context of being compassionate to what the crew needs, but at the same time trying to help the captain run his boat and keep an operation that's as stress minimalistic as possible?
I think it's interesting because each boat has its own master standing orders. And I think you see that some of the larger boats with definitely professional crew and the captains who have earned their stripes through everything. I had to do it. You're going to do it. I'm sorry, we've got a job to do, and that's going to be it. I don't know many who actually have taken them away, allowing crew to do it, but just strongly, I think, productively encourage them. Hey, listen, what do you want to do, Johnny Deckhand, Junior? This is your green first job. What do you want to do? How do you see this going? I want to be a captain. Being a captain and achieving that captain status means that you're not going to sit on your phone all day while you're sitting out working on the deck.
Goodness gracious,
That's not going to reward you. Hard work rewards people a lot. And again, I think going back to the wellness thing that we were talking about, I think that all crew want rotation now. And so some people are rolling their eyes over it. Some people have just accepted it as a fact of life. We've gone through and tried to work with some owners to say the good thing about the rotation is for junior crew, we can at least give them a routine to their life. We can say over a 12-month period, every 6 months you get to go home. If we're going to do a 5-1 rotation, it is worth bringing that additional deckhand or that additional stewardess on so that everybody gets to go off and they're not going to change. And I'm thrilled to report, I've just talked to 2 captains about it. And they've all just realized one's just taking off on a crossing and the other's just celebrating sort of his first year. And I'm so excited because the majority of our crew, I'm doing appraisals now because we have hit 12 months. And he's that is really exciting.
For those that don't know, that's huge.
It's gigantic. And so the fact that 2 of these guys are like my favorite boats and just the greatest captains who are really get out and get dirty with the crew. I think that's superb. And those are boats where they just find giving a little bit back and being understandable and being kind and empathetic really does pay off in the long run.
Well, Barrett, I would talk to my clients and remind them that there is no second shift on their boats, that these crew come on board, these boats operate 24/7. And there are even though there are rules for hours of rest and everything else, be real. When you're actively running the boat, when things are happening, that's a nice guideline to follow. It doesn't always work that way. And so with that understanding, then we have to find ways to give crew some ability to find a break or have something to anticipate or look forward to. That's why it's really important when I was trying to figure out how to support our boats, which boats are going to be in charter versus which boats are going to be purely private. 2 different operations, 2 different sets of expectations, both on the owner's side and the crew side. This is where yacht management comes in and puts their experience and intuition into play as well.
And I think that's the one thing with owners, and I think particularly with new owners, there is years of experience. And I've been in this situation before, and I can tell you how it's going to play out. Therefore, I recommend that we take this approach. And you don't have to go through the tough lessons that we've learned or other owners have learned. And I think the one thing that is getting to be a little bit more refreshing is that some owners are really valuing it because they want to see the same faces over and over again and don't like that turnover. They're willing to work with the recommendation. So they realize that in the end, Graham Lord always loves to say it's like $39,000 to replace a deckhand.
He's right,
with that stuff. It's there. And so I think there's the satisfaction of the family, children being so familiar with the people that are there, just walking on, and you don't have to restart again or recreate the wheel, getting to know you and getting the changes done. I think it's huge. And a lot of owners now are committed to staggering their trips. And this is a lot of private boats who have a lot of family use. And the owners are aware, I'm going to give the crew at least 3 to 4 days in between these trips so that they at least have a chance to take a break, but also enough time to turn things around without it being a rush. Because again, having tired crew or exhausted crew or just burnt out crew isn't necessarily great for the owner experience either.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I had one of my best clients that came to me early on, and she said that her interior staff at her estates, her homes, long 10, 15-year, 20-year longevity, and she was hoping to get something like that for her interior crew on her yacht. And that wasn't happening. That was her biggest ask. That was what she hoped for more than anything else. Can you find me interior girls that would hang in there? And there's no promises on that. It's a completely different program.
You got to find great leaders. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It comes from the top down.
The International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network. That's what we call ISWAN. Bring this in because this is for the benefit of crew. And as I understand it, Hill Robinson is the first yacht management company to formally and actively bring this program into your management.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's really important.
I think it's really great. My colleague Kaylee really did a good job at pushing that and making the whole thing happen. I know George is very excited about it. We've talked about it plenty too with the ISS. But Hill Rob, I think now has really changed a little bit, has done a big commitment to committing to the crew. So we have a whole crew services program that not only is just payroll and employment contracts, things like that, it now includes just the human element of it. So there's people that the crew can reach out to. There's grievances that we need to handle. There's harassment on board. We can initiate those things so that we can try and head those things off. With a captain, why did the crew member leave? Let's get to the nitty gritty first, and then we can figure out if it's something that we have to fix, or whether or not it's just a time to move on and the personality just didn't work.
Sometimes
you
it happens.
You need to drill down and find out what the root cause is. And I think it's now listening when it's hearing that stuff. And again, we have the Hill Robinson Academy, which is a whole training platform with like over 7,000 courses that are on it.
Wow.
Which includes everything from, okay, basic Excel, and we all need to be freshed up on that, but also just with how to deal with conflict, how to read a room. And I think sometimes with a lot of crew, particularly new ones who are very enthusiastic, coming on board and just saying, hey, boss, you're going to love me and this is going to be great. I'm the best thing ever. That doesn't sometimes go well. You've got owners who want the crew not to be seen. They don't want to be around. And then you've got some families that just want the crew to be part of the experience.
Part of the family,
They're
right.
part of the family, and that's essential to them.
Yeah.
So again, it's all that reading the room, but also just, I think, growing up a little bit. With iSwan, it goes a little bit deeper than that because there is that helpline.
24/7, right?
24/7 helpline. And if somebody is just having a bad day, there's somebody that you can call and somebody's going to be on the other line and they will just listen to you. And it's also not just for the crew member, it's extended to their family.
No, wow. So it supports the family on the beach then.
You got it. So if a partner's at home and is worried about something or is nervous or anxious, this service is also available to them too. They've got a telephone number that they call and there will be somebody on the other end.
Yeah, yeah. But this also, I don't mean to connect it directly to iSwan, but when you're on a small, when all boats are small, you're on the ocean, so even the big ones get small. One of the challenges for crew is that if you do need to speak to somebody, your privacy. Where are you going to go and have that conversation? And that's something that when I talk to yacht builders and designers, that I ask that question, are you thinking about that now? Because we're in a new place in thinking about boat design to understand the crew's role. I mentioned that 119-meter fed ship that we looked at and the amazing work they did in creating crew spaces, and that would be like the gold standard that very few boats can achieve because it takes a lot of space to do it, and an owner's commitment to allow it. When you're all of a sudden dealing with whether it's bullying or you need to talk to somebody, that's the other part. Where are the safe spaces? And not a lot of boats have those safe spaces.
They don't, and I think a lot of crew do rely on their cabin mate to be their sounding board and to be the person that is going to offer them a little bit of support. A lot of people don't want to go up and complain about a captain because I don't want them to know that I'm wanting them to be gone because I don't like them or they didn't teach me, weren't nice to me. Again, I think right now with some crew, some are a little bit more sensitive than they maybe should be, a little bit tougher skin. If a captain barks at you over something, it's generally because something's not going to be done, and it could be a problem, and it could be a safety issue. It could just be something, or it may be something that they've told you multiple times over, and you're still not paying attention to it. So they shouldn't look at it as something that's personal and a day-to-day thing. And sometimes also the captains have a lot of stuff going on, but those out, I don't think that they are a lot of the time sincerely doing it just to be mean.
That's a tough job.
Yeah, they were mean to me, and I'm going to go and file a grievance over it. Okay, how were they mean to me? They barked at me while I was polishing something. Okay, maybe what were you doing? Yeah, I actually was hanging over the side and not doing what I was supposed to be doing. There's that kind of stuff. And yes, there are definitely some captains I think that we have to train up a little bit to be a little
sensitive?
softer. Well, yeah, the sensitive thing, but I think a little bit more tolerant. I think the one thing is you really have to mind your response. Mind the gap, count to 10 seconds. Take that deep breath and don't say what you were wanting to say. Take a step back and bite your tongue.
That's a tough one for some people.
Huge. I had to do a ton of training here in order to try and hold myself back from that because I would just blow a gasket. And I realized that doesn't work.
It gets counterproductive at times, but sometimes the captain is the master of the vessel and he's got the ultimate responsibility. And so if there's somebody that's conducting themselves in an unsafe manner or something that puts the vessel at some level of risk, could be even reputational risk, it's on him to make sure that it's resolved and that problem doesn't go beyond where he sees it.
It does, and I think the captains need to understand, too, that they are responsible for the full thing. We've just had an audit conducted on one boat, and it's a boat that we had recently taken over, so it was just, all right, let's check where everything is. And there was not very good record keeping. The record keeping was basically non-existent on board. And so, again, it was coming back to who's ultimately responsible. And it's the chief officer should have been a better administrator. The engineer should have known that he was supposed to keeping records of service and things like that. But in the end, it does come down to the captain, who's responsible for leading that and making sure that everybody is doing the job that they've been assigned to do.
Yep. So I wrote down a statistic I thought I'd just put out here because I knew we'd get to this point in the conversation. Let me know what you think of this, because it doesn't surprise me. A 2018 iSwan survey revealed significant welfare challenges among superyacht crew. For example, 82% experienced low morale sometimes, often, or always. 55% of female respondents face challenges accessing mental health care. I don't know why necessarily they segregated the female respondents from that, because I would imagine the male respondents, maybe fewer male respondents are trying to access mental health care. I don't know what that looks like. But the point being, this is a reflection of a poor morale standard on board yachts right now. And I know there's a program called CHIRP, that crew can reach out and make an anonymous report to CHIRP about conduct and things that are happening on board these vessels, and then CHIRP should be doing their own investigation and taking that report seriously. And then you have your DPA, and this is something I wanted to ask you, because I think the position of the DPA, the designated person ashore, for those that don't understand the acronym, is one of the most important decisions you make, because that individual in an emergency, for instance, let's say something happens to the captain, that individual has to take on the role of the captain, make some decisions on behalf of the captain. And if you haven't had that hands-on experience, how do you do it? And yet I'm aware of some people that have been designated DPAs that have not really even spent time at sea. So as an industry, how do we take that serious? What's that look like?
I think that yacht managers who do have onboard experience, whether it be with a cruise ship, whether it be on the commercial side with tankers or things like that, or again, working divers, working oil rigs and things like that, but also just working on the yachts.
If you worked at sea, on the ocean.
You understand how terrifying a particular situation can be. And so I think that gives you a lot of what can go wrong. And so I think obviously the role of DPA is to be able to handle emergency and be able to handle it efficiently. So I think, to me, having everybody who is capable of doing that is huge. Right now we've just had a shift. Our DPA is retiring, and then we've had some changes within our compliance department due to retirement. So now we're reassessing and bringing the next people up who are taking over as the DPA, CSO, that stuff, and new compliance managers. And those that are stepping up right now have been both either on Navy ships or they've been on commercial yachts. They've spent time in the commercial arena, and they know just how important timeliness is. And again, that's exactly the role of the DPA. And again, the managers, it's safety first and foremost. There must be somebody on the other end of the line. DPA not available. Who's going to go through the cascade to be able to handle everything? So you always want somebody who's going to be able to do it. Hence emergency drills internally on a regular basis to make sure that if the receptionist answers the phone, she knows what she's supposed to do.
That's right. We sometimes talk about red tape. And this is a nice segue into the owner's dynamics into yacht management, because as a professional organization, a professional company, you're delivering professional services to a standard. And this is where I think the yacht management company truly finds its value, and at the same time is subject to some of its most harsh criticism. What's been your experience in that owner dynamic interface?
The thing I like to say is the yacht manager, the owner has signed a contract with the yacht manager to look after their asset. The yacht manager is responsible. If something goes wrong, it could very well be the yacht manager who goes to jail. Nick loves to say that to emphasize a point.
That'll get your attention.
So it really does. And sometimes it's in jest. At the same time, there's a huge liability that the managers are undertaking. And so therefore it is in our best interest, and obviously in the best interest of the owner, to make sure that everything is done safely and unfortunately by the book, by the regulations. And going back to the flag thing, you can go the easy way, but we don't think that's the best way. And we found in certain situations, and I think most immediately with first-time yacht owners. I think they want what they want and they don't understand why they can't necessarily get what they want. And as we were talking about before, they don't know what they don't know.
They don't know what they don't know. And they're not used to being told no.
Exactly. And nobody wants to say no.
No, of course
I keep
not.
saying the last thing I want to say is no, and we'll look at every avenue possible to figure out a way in which to be able to accommodate it. But sometimes the answer is no.
Right.
And I find that I would really, sometimes it's hard when you've spent so much time working on a recommendation, writing up a report, writing up all the facts, and we've given you 3 options, and this is the recommendation that we say, not the shortest time, not the least inexpensive, but this is going to be the best way forward. And sometimes it gets very frustrating when that's dismissed. There's a lot of time and effort on a lot of people, and that's doing it because we sincerely care. And then to have it fall on deaf ears is something that can get frustrating from time to time.
Owners sometimes look at it as either an optional type of service or an adversarial type of service.
They do. I'm going to go and find somebody else who's going to tell me what I want to hear. If another company is as good as we are, they're going to tell you the same thing.
So in your experience, what are I have my own, but I want to hear it from you. When you look at owners that come in with a particular size boat, where's the sweet spot?
To me, I think if you're going to commit to something that's in the 60-meter range, you're going up, that is a major investment, and you need good quality crew to look after that. That is a dynamic boat at that size. It's of huge volume with those, and I think there's just so many things that can go wrong. It's going to cost you a lot more money. And I think when you do go to this size, and I'm just going to say it based on my experience, you get the more professional crew who are ready to go and jump on that boat. It's a really enticing platform for them. It's a place, it's something that can go the long distance. And when you moved into that, I think you've got an owner who is committed. They want things done well. They're going to look after the boat.
Most crew that come into this space are looking at those boats going, that's where I want to be.
That's where I want to
get. That's when I get there. Which is interesting because living here in Florida, in South Florida particularly, the yachting capital of the world, you look at the fleet of boats we have here, and they're the 25 to 40 meter boats. And arguably, they need yacht management probably as much, if not more, than the bigger boats do.
And they're the ones who are least likely to listen.
Yes.
Based on my experience, I don't know yours.
Well,
what do you think is the best?
Listen, we were always happy to look at the bigger boats because we knew they were going to be easier. We knew that the crew was going to be easier, the owners were going to be more seasoned, more experienced, easier to deal with. The whole program is easier. But at the same time, one of the takeaways I had when I started working with my clients here in South Florida and really in the eastern part of the United States, because I had them from New England all the way down to St. Kitts, it was like a 50-50 proposition. Half my clients or the potential clients were purely price focused. And no, we're not going to spend that kind of money. That's silly. I'll have my captain do it. The other half were like, wow, I see the value. I had one gentleman, I sat on the back of his boat and he says, Rick, I've got a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund that I manage. Why am I doing my own financial management? And I looked at him and said, I don't know, sir, why? We can do it for you. Can probably deliver a better level of service tied into how you're going to use your boat. He was going to put his boat into charter. He did put his boat into charter. It's a hit and miss kind of thing. But I would say that the fleet of boats in particularly the 100 to 130, 140 foot, they really need good management. And they don't know what they don't know. That's where they're missing out. And that's where I think the problems show up. When you look around and see the stuff that shows up in social media with all these boats that are having issues, that's where it begins.
I agree with you on that, and I think it's the willingness to listen. A well-run boat is just going to be a dream.
Well-maintained,
Well-maintained, like it's worth it. You just have to step on and just enjoy yourself, and when you step off, it's going to be consistent. And so I think a lot of the time with some of the smaller boats, going back to I'll just have my captain do it, a lot of family offices that we've started talking to a little bit more, and the family offices are becoming more and more, I think, introduced to the yachting industry, particularly as wealth has grown in the United States in particular. And I think that those are the ones that are looking outside a little bit more, saying, I just don't understand this industry. This does not make sense.
It doesn't align with anything else they do, including aviation.
It doesn't. And it's a completely different thing. I still chuckle when I'm like, oh yeah, it's just going to be, that's a national marine order for food. It's $25,000, things like that. Or there's the yacht cell phone bill and it's $5,500 or something for the month for all of these lines that are connected to it. Meanwhile, I go home and I'm like, what?
Doesn't align with budget
$200 phone phone bill at home.
I get my
there's-
cell phone, if it hits $200, I'm like, okay, there's a problem
I
here.
know.
Tristan.
But that's the thing where I think you take a step away and you just have to realize that, yeah, there's always going to be an extra zero. If you can
Or
do it in
two.
your house, it's going to be more money on the boat. And I think that it's managing those expectations.
Right. So expectations, and only the captain, or I can let the captain do it. I'm going to bring up something. It's been a conversation this last 6 months. I'm not going to name names, but those that know. Those that know. There was a situation that happened in St. Bart's around Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an instance where it was a very successful charter program. The captain did an exceptionally good job of marketing the boat and delivering revenue to the owner, to the point that the owner's, okay, cool, you run, you go. He had a yacht management company. Yep. Captain compartmentalized the yacht management company and the DPA from the owner, from the management company, finances. They were all in their own box, and the captain oversaw all of that. And it worked really well until it stopped working.
Still didn't.
Until it didn't. They had an accident with their tender. 12, 13 crew were hurt, 3 grievously injured, one almost killed. And that is, and then that successful program just crashed on the shoulders of one individual who was charged to run the boat and was ultimately running the whole thing.
Yep.
So I think that's a cautionary tale. I don't know. I try to put myself in that same position. What if that was my boat under my management? Would I have known that I was being compartmentalized or not? And so I think that's something that we have to pay attention to, because I know you can come in with your services and offer financial and ISM and maybe do the payroll, the operational and charter, maybe going someplace else. Yep. And so this is, like I said, it's a cautionary tale, because we have to learn from these types of mistakes to try to prevent them from happening.
Yeah, and I think that's why an owner has hired a management company. Again, you get a great deal sometimes on your insurance premium because you've got a safety manager there. But there's a couple of things that I like to tell owners, particularly new owners. I do not encourage the owner to become overly friendly with their crew. To me, the crew member is an employee.
Yes.
I firmly advise my owners, I strongly recommend that they refer to you as Mr. or Mrs. or ambassador or senator or sir or madame or however it goes. But I don't think that first name bases are very good. I think you need to have a clear line between who is the employer and who is the employee. I then think that when it comes to
familiarity breeds contempt.
And everybody thinks they're invincible. There's even some junior crew that think, oh, I didn't like what you told me, so I'm going to go tattle and I'm going to go talk to them. And sometimes the crew think they're invincible with that. And that's not the way the hierarchy works. And obviously, as Americans and American owners, they have a very different dynamic with their captains. And management is very differently structured than it is with our European colleagues.
That's true.
And in Europe and with a lot of even Middle Eastern, Asian, programs, you find that there is the owner who then has a representative who then talks to the manager who then goes down to the captain, and everybody is told that way.
Yep.
In the United States, you've got the owners who are like, hey, my friend referred this captain. He really loves him. So therefore that captain knows most, and we're going to listen to what he has to say. So these days, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's just a challenge for the manager, is that the captain has a great deal of influence. And so to me, I've learned there's no point in trying to boss a captain around, trying to tell them what to do. That is not going to be successful for anybody, and probably not successful for the manager. To me, I like to encourage that it's a collaboration. I am here to make you, captain, look good so that the owner is super happy and we all have something to do tomorrow.
There you go.
And so that's my take on things, is it's a collaboration. I'm here to support you. You've got better things to do. You need to run the boat. You're running a small hotel. You've got people issues, mechanical issues, guest issues, everything like that you have to deal with. Allow the manager to absorb a lot of that, not responsibility, but the administrative side of things. It's our job to keep you up to date with regulations. It's our job to make sure that owner wants to have 100 people on board the boat at anchor on this particular night. How are we going to make sure that's done safely? Can the boat accommodate that? Can the boat have capacity for it? So at this particular point, that's where I'd like to say that this again is, you've got such resources and so many advantages to using a manager to help you'll learn the lessons that they've already learned.
Sometimes the best lessons are hard learned, and then they become your best client.
Yep.
Because they've figured out that this kind of program really is the right way to go. And that's hopefully one of the messages we get across, whether it's going to be with Hill Robinson or any one of a number of other very well-run professional yacht management companies. Because while we're on the subject of yacht management companies, Google it and see what comes up. And it's, oh my God, there's 1,000 of them that show up. And I would dare say that there's maybe a dozen what I'd call really top tier yacht management companies in the industry that do this job to the level and the standard it should be. And we're talking to the president of one of them right now. So I think that's really important that now I'm talking to the captains and the high net worth individuals that watch this show and really encourage you to do your homework, talk to other people that are using yacht management services and understand the value, because it's genuine value. And I think it's important to the well-being of your boat and your experience, a good, pleasant experience in being an owner of a yacht, wanting to stay in the game and not bailing out because you've got a really crappy experience coming out of some situation that could have been prevented.
This is the funny thing. The ISM code is the ISM code, and we're all working from the exact same code. So it's the interpretation of it. It's the resources that are given to it. There are personalities that are at play here. I have to sit there and look at clients that are coming on, and I'm like, okay, that yacht manager isn't going to work so well with that particular captain. That yacht accountant isn't going to be a good match for them. This one is going to be perfect, and it's going to be great. I've got so many of my team that are personally responsible for captains coming back to the fleet after they've either switched boats or they've gone to something else. There's been an ownership change, and they're like happy to come back because they enjoyed working with a team member so much. And to me, that is just, it doesn't get any better than that.
No,
and I think that it's, again, each company's approach to it. We're very hands-on. I deliberately invite myself on board for lunch, for better or worse, just to get a feel of what's going on in the mess, pick up on the vibes and things like that. We have a hands-on approach to things. There are others that aren't, but or on an as-needed basis. You've got some of the really big companies who have the boat builders that are part of the family, but still sometimes there's a challenge with getting things done. And again, I was talking with somebody, it was like, if they have this and that, then why aren't you getting the answers? And why isn't the right hand talking to the left hand and all of this? But I think it's also interesting for an owner to talk to somebody outside just to get a different opinion.
They should. Absolutely.
And I think and people do change, cycle through. I've started to see maybe 5 years is the cycle that people go through a manager and then decide that they're going to make a change. Circumstances change. I'm going to a different location.
Right. Boats change.
You got it. And so personalities change. And so I think the one thing that's interesting, we've got 12 offices around the globe, so we can do the 24/7. But it's really interesting working with your colleagues and trying to work together on a singular project. We've got a U.S. fleet we look after from here. Generally, the U.S. owners of the boats that spend a lot of their time here.
Right.
They go to the other parts of the world.
You
We're
hand
able
them
to
off.
make an introduction to somebody. But we found in handing it off, it doesn't really work. So you got to maintain your client service team in the same office with a person on the ground in the same time zone who can say, I know this person, I know that, I can answer you when your yacht manager's asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's 8 a.m. for me, and I'm jumping right on it. So there's that. But like I was having a chat with a colleague of mine, and so sometimes there have been boats that we've tried to breach the gap and say, okay, we'll deal with accounts on this side, and you do with all the rest of it on that side. And we're finding sometimes as great as it sounds, it doesn't work well because, again, the struggles with communication, the time differences, often the language differences, expectations. This was really urgent. You don't understand. You didn't tell me that was urgent. Okay, I should have, and I would thought you were like connected to my brain and picked up on my mind. Seriously. So there's those things. And it's funny because it is communication and all that stuff. And again, internally, sometimes there are the struggles when you're dealing with the different offices, just because that sense of urgency might be lost in a different, it's the end of my day, it's the start of my day. Why can't you get this to me before the end of the day? I need an answer. So you got to, I think, be very aware of times.
You do. And that said, you do also bring that benefit of those multi-offices over multi-locations so that when something happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's somebody in the organization that's on watch. Yeah, you're not waiting for 8 o'clock somewhere in the morning to get a problem addressed. Yeah, that's important.
So yeah, we have one of our med fleet boats is over here and they had a problem. And so immediately brought us into it. And it's like, all right, we know this person, we'll go in. We know this location, used to live there, all of this stuff. And so it's really great when it all works out that way, that you can still keep the, okay, I'm handing off to this person. Here's the notes right now. We're going to keep it all going. The captain being the consistent one, but it's just, you've got all considerations that are being made. So
That's right.
sometimes having a whole lot of hands on the cookie jar is great, but sometimes it's also a little bit of a hindrance because it's, oh, wait, hold, I didn't agree with that. Oh, did you mention this? And again, bless everybody who just wants to do a really great job and resolve the problem. But again, I think there's just, we all are still learning.
That's what we do.
Interesting.
That's what we do. And it's good to be able to pull resources and have that because, you
would
know,
have had that at JMS.
Oh yeah, that was the easy button.
Yep.
That was what made what we did over here so possible. Is they had an amazing and they still have an amazing organization of resourceful engineers and managers and accountants and everything you need to deal with whatever problem comes up. You can't do that in every location and then support that overhead and be competitive or be nimble. I think being nimble is really important too.
And I think keying on that word support, we've had the unfortunate situation of having to deal with crew members who have passed. And so
Yes, that's
there's
real.
investigations that you have to do, and sometimes the person who's local is the person who's going to get there first. And speaking from firsthand experience, I can't tell you how much I've appreciated just the support of colleagues on the other side saying, I will keep this going and you need to go to sleep. You need to take a step away from this and I'll keep that going and you come back on and hopefully I'll have answers for you here. And so I think for better or worse in those really bad, terrible situations, just having somebody that you can lean on, trust and rely on, I think reliability for a yacht manager is key.
And if you get into this space and think that you're not going to one day deal with that, you're unfortunately greatly mistaken because, first of all, as long as men have been going down to the sea and women as well, bad things happen. And it's just the way of the world. It always has been, always will be, never change. And then you get into the crew welfare, and then you get into things that unfortunately do happen on board boats or while on the beach, while on a trip. And whether it's a motorcycle accident or a suicide.
It's serious. You've got a serious illness.
All of a sudden you collapse and get to the hospital and the heart stops working and that's done.
You're terminal on things. And I guess the thing too with the yacht managers, you're not just dealing with the crew member, but you're dealing with obviously all their colleagues that are working with.
Which are family.
They are family, but then when you're actually having to make that telephone call to the family and making the arrangements, you're all looked after, every question's going to be answered. There is that whole follow through of closing it, but then anniversaries come. You still got to remember that somebody is not coming home this year again, and you still have to be somewhat aware of that. So that's where I think the relationships really start to build.
Very aware
I think
of
that those are hugely important.
It is. And so I think that is, if you're sitting on the fence wondering, is yacht management something that really would benefit my program? You think about things like that, and wouldn't you want to have a professional organization in place to deal with those potential issues instead of having to have your home office or you yourself having to make those hard phone calls or having to get personally involved in something that's very difficult to address.
Yeah, and even a captain, you don't want to go through that alone.
No, that'd be horrible. And that's happened in our industry way too often, too much because of the way things used to be done. So we've grown, we've evolved as an industry. We've got resources now that didn't exist 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So that's good.
No, I think that's excellent. So people are people. They're not just, go live in the bilge.
So you gave me a great segue. We're an industry that goes way, way back. I'm 40 plus years in the maritime industry, and I've watched what's happened. You, speaking of the obvious, are a young woman in the position of president of this amazing, you absolutely. And
sometimes you don't feel it.
Yeah, Chris paid me to say that. No. But it's true. Women in yachting and women in industry is a thing. And this has been a very misogynistic industry. Nobody's doubting that. I even said it a few minutes ago when men went down to the sea. Because historically, it was men going down to the sea.
There was the widow walk for a reason.
There was a widow, and you saw a lot of those up in New England, didn't you? Because those men would go out whaling and a percentage of them would never come back. So that's a reality check. But I've watched a number of remarkable women become remarkable in this industry. I have had many of them on my podcast. In fact, I'm really close to almost a 50-50, and it's not intentional. It's just because there's enough of them in the industry that have put themselves or come to a place where their conversation is interesting, belongs in this forum. And yourself is, of course, included in that. And so I have to ask a question. What's your perception now, today, 2025, women in yachting? Is it a fair shake? Are we still dealing with some of the same misogynistic challenges that maybe existed when you started in your career 20 years ago?
I think it comes from it becoming a possibility for more women. Let's just go to the boats, crew. You always have this whole thing. Deckhand can go to lead deckhand, can go to bosun, can go to second officer, chief officer, captain.
Right.
There's this perception that for the interior, which is traditionally female, it's you get to be a junior stewardess, second, second,
Chief.
Purser, boom. So you're never offered any position of being in command, per se. God bless the likes of Captain Sandy and Sally Wilkins and Nicole Fawcett, and all of those out that are really doing a great job.
Yep.
And so they've taken advantage of that and they wanted to do it. So to me, I think there's all the advantages in the world. I think it's just getting the women to understand it's theirs to be taken.
Well, when I was counseling potential crew members coming in and they were on the fence, I would say, particularly on the smaller boats, take a path deck stew if you can, because then you get the interior side, you get the exterior, and you might find that you really like working deck.
You might like the carpentry and everything, the precision of that stuff.
Absolutely.
But I think moving ashore, it used to be for a while, and I had chatted with Nick about this a little bit, that he thinks that women in general just make better yacht managers because I think by nature, we don't have an ego to fight on things. I can sit back and say, let's talk about wine and bread for a little while rather than what else is going on. And I think that women by nature are multitaskers. I think just goes with being a mom. I'm not a mom, but I watched my mom who was working and just doing everything. You can drop a task and then pick up another one, complete that, and then pick up where you left off.
Detail-oriented, too.
And I think that's to our advantage. And I think that a lot of the successful women that I've known have proven that they're multifaceted. With being able to do it. And I think that the really successful women who have moved in have seized an opportunity. It may have been a nugget of something that's come through, but it's been something that's been given as an advantage and it's yours to lose. And so I think there's that bit of speak up. When you go to a lot of the conferences and things like that, you'll hear the men speaking up and, no offense, posturing on things and carrying on. And you won't see a lot of the women saying anything. And even if it's just a comment on something, it's just say it. Make your voice heard a little bit more. I still remember Catherine Kent saying, it's all of your problems that we have to deal with rotation now. She's like, all of you have facilitated this. And I just remember that with her coming in and her heels and just looking drop dead gorgeous and pointing her finger around at everybody, but it made like a statement. So
interesting.
Those are the things. And you just look at the likes of Erin Acker now, everything that she's achieved, and now she's going
just
on
moved
her
on.
own.
I know, I love that.
I know.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the second coming. And I think that there's a lot of recreation there. That's good. But I think that you have to have a lot of confidence in a male setting. You know, because I think you have to be confident. If I'm going to be the only one in the room, then...
So at the risk of being politically incorrect, which I never am, no, but really, I try to be sensitive. Yeah, we all are. I think we all have our biases, whatever. But I've been involved with, and I'm vocally supportive of a lot of women-centric organizations in this industry. But then I also look at some of the things that are going on, whether it's Yacht Femme or professional women in yachting, and some of the things that are being done to promote women in yachting. Bravo. But do they start becoming a self-serving platform for women who want to find a way to scale in this business? Is the conversation gone too far into virtue signaling, or is this still really something we need to perpetuate and maintain to give women that leg up that they otherwise may not have in our industry?
I think it's great from a support network just with women together. You're a sorority. There's that. I always equate the industry as a fraternity. Everybody turns up, knows somebody somewhere, and we all are doing the same thing. You got it. And so I think a lot of these women's groups are very, very much like sororities. I think they celebrate the group that they have and all the wins internally. And I think that being able to project those more outside and demand the recognition for that, blast a press release, put that person, as we discussed, everywhere. But I think that it needs to be more outside. I told you before we were sat down that to celebrate these victories that are just, it seems so significant for women, but is it really that big a deal?
Right.
Somebody has been appointed ahead of a build company or a design house or things like that. Is that truly so remarkable? Is it really because it was a woman who was there, or is it because she had the exact capability or better capability than any other candidate
at that
there?
time, and had the vision and whatever that innovation looked like, and that's how it came out?
It's funny because my dad said when I was a kid, I was like, why did you name me Barrett? And my dad was like, what did you want to be? And I was like, Jennifer or something like that. And my dad said, one day you're going to thank me. Just because you can't find a license plate with Barrett on it, or you can't find the Coke bottle with your name on it, trust me, you're going to appreciate it one day. And actually, in this particular industry, it has been wildly to my advantage, because I can't tell you how many times I get addressed as Mr. Wright.
Oh my goodness.
I can't tell you how many times I've written back to people, and I won't necessarily correct them on it, but then there's a conversation that's followed up, and it's a different voice than what they were expecting. That to me is just a little bit of fun, and it's a little bit different. You can't go ahead and make assumptions.
No, you dare not to. You dare
Assume
not
makes
to.
an ass of you and me. So I just think that's, my dad was right with that stuff, and I think that's has been to my advantage in this particular industry. But if a woman is able to do the job and she's got the same skill set and she just is able to do it better, then just take that as fact.
I love it. Barrett, as we move towards the end of this wonderful conversation, I've got to ask you, what's one thing you wish the yachting industry would get better at, whether it's owner relations, crew, support, something else? Where can we improve?
I just would like people to be more okay and accepting of, you don't know what you don't know. Like I say, with new owners and even current owners, they're quick to say, my friend said this, or this person told me that, and therefore it's gospel, and this is the way we're going to go. I don't care. We've got some pretty spectacular situations that have come up that, as a seasoned yacht manager, okay, I know where this is going, and it's not a good idea. You get that, but what really is irksome from that is that it's often that we're punished for it. So again, you get the accusation of you're intentionally creating red tape, or why are you making this so difficult? And it's truly not there. It's just, this is what the law says, and this is what current situations are. And this is, again, we were talking about Russian sanctions.
Yeah.
A lot of us took a hit with that.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just the way of it. That was the law. So unfortunately, that's the rules that we have to play by right now. And so just with other things to make things happen with, I don't want to pay that much. Why does it cost so much? Or I just like this person. Documentation they produced is counterfeit. Isn't that a problem? We're not going to get past this. It doesn't seem to matter. And so that's where I would just like a little bit more of a regard for the fact that there is a lot of experience that has gone into saying what we're saying. We've been there, we've done it. We don't want you to have to experience the same. Yes. And again, I like to tell people, why, crew member, would I not make sure that you're getting paid? Because if you turn around and decide to sue the owner, then guess what? That's just a lot more paperwork for me to deal with and a lot more of my time to do, and I don't want to do that. Of course, I'm going to make sure that this is all done correctly.
Of course.
I don't want to be, nobody wants to be sued. Nobody wants to go into wrongful dismissal, all of that stuff. So again, it's, I don't want to do it, so let's do it the right way to start.
You're right, absolutely.
Exactly, call me selfish for that, but that truly
I think that's actually,
I will be selfish there.
Or intelligent. I think intelligence probably a better adjective than selfish on that one. And Barrett, I just have to say thank you so much. What a fun conversation this has been. I feel so honored. It's such a treat. No, this is my treat. This is cool. This is Yacht Management 101. We got to talk about it. We went down a number of really cool rabbit holes. And I hope the takeaway for everybody is that this is a complex business with a lot of moving parts. And it's something that you guys really want to have as part of your program if you really want to have a scaled professional program.
I just want to say to you, Rick, that you're really in a dynamic position. You have been a manufacturer for things. You've been on the delivery. You've had a service to sell and people want it. You've been on the yacht management side, which without having sort of equipment or an item to sell is sometimes harder because it sometimes seems like it's a philosophy rather than anything else. And now doing what you're doing, just getting to know, you've got an amazing network. So I really think that you yourself have done an excellent job. And this is a wonderful, Yacht Radio is just an excellent platform.
I know enough to be dangerous, and all my NDAs have expired. So it's a great place to be.
Exactly.
It's a great place to be. And we're going to continue these conversations. And Barrett, I wish you only the most success.
Thank you, and you too.
And look forward to crossing paths with you again and again.
Yes.
All right. All right.
See you too.
And until the next time, I'm out of here.